So I've taught in 3 countries. I've taught in Jamaica, Japan, and the US. And these 3 countries do things that are similar, but they also have many differences. And I like to carry a piece of each country's flavor to my classroom.
Is that everybody keep thinking success is on the right and failure is on the left. But if in reality, success is in the middle, like a bullseye, and failure is all around you. So you're going to have to fail your way to success.
On the other hand, at the middle school level, a student that just is advocating for themselves with great vigor, and then the next minute they are coming to run and hug you, and I'm like, but you were just so it's so different, right, in a space of a short time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Career Education Learning Center podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Rivers. As we explore different careers that our young people may want to consider when they're thinking about careers, like what career do I want to go do? What do I want to do? Now, one of the careers we're going to talk about today is teaching. And one of the things about teaching that I had trouble with was the subject of science. And so today we have Candice Jones on our podcast show today to talk about science. And she is a science teacher. She has been a part of the Gaston County school system for a while now, and she can discuss why she got into science, why she became a teacher, and why is she teaching middle school. Let's be honest about it. Candice, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Candice, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to the career of teaching.
Okay. Ever since I've known myself, I've always been teaching persons. So as far back as I can remember, I've been teaching persons my same age and also persons who are older than myself. Right? So because of that, to me, teaching is almost like breathing. Right? So it is something that is near and dear to my heart. I really love explaining things to people and seeing when it clicks in their minds that I finally understand that. That is an incredible feeling. There are few things that I think on this earth that can replace that feeling for me. Also, I have family members who are educators. My father was a principal. My aunt was a university lecturer. And even when I was probably about 6 years old, they have always included me in conversations when they were talking about their jobs and how they are trying to solve educational problems. And they would ask me, the young child, what do I think? What would you do as a lecturer in this, if you were in that position? And how could you explain this simpler? And in my mind at that age, I was saying, that's a real wild question to ask a young person, but I'm saying, okay, I'll try and answer it. So I am used to thinking through educational problems and solving them from a young age. So for me, I just think that it was such a big part of my life that it seemed like the most expected outcome for me.
And not only that, ladies and gentlemen, you can tell by her accent, she's from Jamaica. She is a native Jamaican. As I said, it's wrong, ladies and gentlemen. And so did you go to college in Jamaica or did you go here in America?
So I did my undergraduate degree. I did a double major in pure chemistry and zoology. Right. And then a few years later, I did a postgraduate diploma in science education. So that got me my credentials as a teacher. But I chose to do the double major in science because I wanted a good foundation in science so that I could be able to explain the concepts better, I thought. So that was the reason I did that. And then last year, I got a master's of education in administration and supervision at Liberty University here in the US.
Wow. So that begs the question, And I also come from a teaching family. Also, Candice, my mother was a teacher. My aunt was a teacher. I got aunts, cousins, all over the place teachers. So I'm used to those educational questions and making me think when I was little.
Okay.
So did your family support you coming to America to teach when you was already in Jamaica?
Yes, they were. My family has been very supportive, especially of all my ideas. And they would help me to think through how I should do things and to try to optimize for better outcomes. So with coming to the US, one of the reasons I wanted to come here was because I have family over here, but also one of my drives as an educator is to understand education systems in different countries, see what are their strengths and learn about it, and then learn how to apply it in my practice. So I've taught in 3 countries. I've taught in Jamaica, Japan, and the US. And these 3 countries do things that are similar, but they also have many differences. And I like to carry a piece of each country's flavor to my classroom.
Wow, that's a great experience right there in 3 different countries, and you bring different flavors to each one. So So you taught in Japan. How was that experience? Tell us about that. I know my audience will listen. But what about that, Mr. Rivers? Ask about Japan. Ask about Japan. So how was that experience teaching in Japan?
You're sounding like my students here in the US. Because for the first class, we normally introduce ourselves to our students. And that's one of the questions they normally ask me. Well, teaching in Japan was very lovely for me. Right. The system was very structured. They were an on-time culture. So being on time means being 15 minutes early. That's what being on time means in that culture. But as it pertains to teaching, I learned a lot there because my Japanese is squishy. I only know a little bit of Japanese, right? So I went over there not even knowing how to properly introduce myself in Japanese. But I was an English language assistant teacher over there. And my purpose was to immerse the students in English. So I didn't really have to speak Japanese. But for my students, the ones who were struggling, I chose to learn some Japanese, especially the target language that I was teaching that day, to be able to say that to them in Japanese so they can understand something for the entire class. But for most students, because they are exposed to English, because like, for example, when you ride the trains, they speak in Japanese, but they also speak in English.
Yeah.
Right. And many of the signs are in Japanese and English. So they have been immersed in English from they are very young. So most of them were able to understand. And I taught at the middle school level over there as well. So that was very interesting.
That is very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. And it's been told me by many educators in my family, out of my family, that middle school is one of the toughest or challenging areas. So if you go elementary, middle, and high school, middle school has one of the toughest areas because those young people, and God bless their souls, is that you're in between the age where you want to be independent, but you're not quite ready to be on your own, but you want to be on your own, and then your hormones going all over the place, and you don't know how to react with that hormones, how to take your frustration out, how to laugh, how to cry. You do all that in 1 hour.
Yes. So my experience at middle school, because in Jamaica, I was teaching at the high school level. And I normally taught grade 10 and grade 11 mostly. I did teach grade 9, but I was mostly at grade 10 and 11. So for me, going to teach middle school in the 2 countries that I'm not teaching at home was a big a big grade shift, because students in grade 10 and 11, they are much more mature, right?
Yes.
Just as you just said, right? So the differences in their behavior from morning to evening is much more even keel. They're still teenagers and but they are more independent and they are more sure about who they are, right? But on the other hand, at the middle school level, a student that just is advocating for themselves with great vigor, and then the next minute they are coming to run and hug you. And I'm like, but you were just so it's so different, right? In a space of a short time. So I had to get used to that and to try to be much more open, right? Because in my classroom, I can think that I'm a bit strict because I like structure, and especially for students, children, structure is essential the younger they are, because for example, they depend on that to know how to operate well in your class. Right. But for me, I have to be a little bit more open, right, to them, because they are showing their emotions more, and they are dealing with learning how to be more emotionally consistent and accountable.
Yes, they really are. So, to me, you had two challenges, but I'm gonna ask you: have you always been into science? Because science, and I talked to Candice earlier this week, has always been a challenge for me. And so, were you always interested in science?
Well, for me, science, okay, I'm a science teacher. So most persons expect me to say, okay, I am interested in the natural world and the laws of science. Well, I am interested in that, but that came far later in life, far later. And that's when I was teaching those laws to the students. But what I really love about science is that it shapes your thinking to be able to understand, is this argument credible? Why is it credible? Right? I think that rationalization is very important for all persons, especially in the digital age where we are bombarded with so many pieces of information, and you need to know, okay, is this true? Why is it true? Is this argument sound? What can I do from this information that I learned? I think that's a critical piece of thing that all young persons should be able to do, especially in such a fast-paced world as it is today.
Yeah, it is a fast-paced world today, and you already think on your feet, right? We have a lot of, I mean, you just talking about the internet, the streaming services, podcasts we're doing today. Everything is fast, right? Fast. But with science, everything's not always fast. Is that correct? I mean, a lot of times you're going to have to really focus on what you're doing, and it's more of a time thing, right? I mean, it takes time to learn a theory, a hypothesis, or whatever you need. And how are you able to merge that, telling students, especially medical students, like, okay, everything is quick in our world, but when it comes to science, not everything is as fast as it want to be. How do you go about doing that?
All right, I believe a lot in grit. So please know that this does not go too well in the beginning stages of my classes, right? So this is a shock for many of them because I totally believe in grit. So therefore, the reason I believe in grit is because I believe that this is a characteristic that regardless whatever field that you are in, if you are able to build this muscle, this level of resiliency to push through hard things, you can do anything. But this is also, as you just said, incredibly important in science, because sometimes you are trying to figure out a scientific questions and it might take you years, right? Before you can figure out that answer. But if it is that you gave up somewhere along the way and did not figure out the answer, then that time in essence would be wasted. So you have to also have some belief in yourself that you are able to do this thing. You are able to do whatever it is that you are trying to do. And you have to be able to persevere because you need that in any aspect of your life.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said before, everything's just so fast paced, and to get that down, in the down part. What do you enjoy most about science, Candice? We know science is something that came, you said, later on in your life, but what do you enjoy most about science?
For me, the story that led to the scientific discoveries.
Oh.
Right? So for me, when I was learning science, a lot of it was always about the theories and then what the theories we're able to do with these theories, right? But for me, how they arrived at the theories was far more interesting, right? And therefore, sometimes once it is that I have the time, I try to give them a background of a scientist to
Yes.
show them that these persons are just like you and I. And these persons, sometimes they did not arrive at the answer in the way that you expected, right? So that they can understand that I can see myself as a scientist, even if it is that I am not whatever picture that they have in mind that a scientist should be.
Yeah, because you have to give them that background on a person that came up with any theory or any hypothesis. And sometimes, probably a lot of times, they just come upon that, right? Sometimes it was a mistake or accident, you know? And then sometimes, like I learned from Edison or whatever, it took a long time to develop what they want to develop, you know? And many failures, I think, and I taught this before, is that everybody keep thinking success is on the right and failures on the left. So, but if in reality, success is in the middle, like a bullseye, and failure is all around you. So you're going to have to fail your way to success, especially in science. You're going to fail your way into success. It's rarely that things just come about with the way you want to in science. You know, if you wanted to do this, to do that. You know, science and engineering about the same in that sense, that it takes time to complete what you want to complete or to get the hypothesis you want to get. And so science was always been rough on me, but I do like that element of it. And like I said, I'm more of a historian. And so the historian aspect of the person, like you said, you like the stories, right, of the person and how they got there, because everybody assumed that the person who invented this or came up with theory, that's all they did all their life was just, you know, they just, especially students, right? They don't think teachers even have an outside world, do they? They think teachers, they teach all day long, they go home and they sleep, eat and sleep, teach and come back home.
And I think what you just said was incredibly important, and that is for all persons. Because the thing is that we want that life is a linear thing. Yeah. So I have this goal, right? And then I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3 steps, and then I'm going to get this goal, obtain this goal, right? But life rarely occurs in such a fashion. So you're going to start really motivated, and then there's going to be some obstacle that comes along. And sometimes if you're not strong enough, you're going to be starting to doubt if you're even going to be able to reach that goal. But it is that once you're able to stick it out in order to, when times are hard, that you still fight through it in order to reach that goal. You are building that muscle, right? You are building that muscle in your brain so that you are becoming more resilient, because we don't get more resilient when we do easy things, albeit I would love that as well. But we get resilient when we do or overcome obstacles that are difficult for us.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, we keep thinking, and I heard this many times, you know, growth comes through obstacles, right? Growth comes to challenges. Growth comes to outside the box. Growth comes to when you have to make a decision on the spot and it may have been wrong. And so you know not to make that wrong decision, right? That's why I say you got to fail your way into success. That's where growth come in. And then the resilience, my grace, that's a great word to use there. Resilience, especially in science, it's almost a basic requirement, because a lot of times they're going to take over and over again. But the thing that you have to be is have a discipline. Now, I don't like that word, and I was in the military, Candice, and so I said, know that word, discipline. But you have to be very much disciplined in that field of study, especially science. What were some of the major differences as far as not only culturally, but from the way that the Japanese teach their students to the way that we teach our students in America?
Okay. So I was in Japan from 2019 to 2022, right? So I was over there in COVID. So I've been here in America since August 2022 to today. All right. One of the differences that comes to mind is that even though they use computers over there, right? It's still, a lot of it is still pen and paper.
Oh.
Like in Jamaica, right? But I think that was done intentionally, right? So the students, they're expected to do, to produce like projects, through the computer and things, but especially they do a lot of interaction, what I would say the traditional way. Right. So in the classes where I taught them as the assistant language teacher, I was fortunate that I was given the opportunity to actually teach a class and the Japanese teacher supported me.
Yes.
That's not the usual way. The usual way is that the Japanese teacher would teach a class and then they would call on you for specific segments of that class.
Okay. Yeah.
But because I've been teaching for a very long time in Jamaica, they realized that I could manage a classroom. And you know that that's exceedingly important in teaching, being able to manage a classroom, but to manage it comfortably, that the objective that you want is obtained at the end. So they realized that I understood all of that, so that I was able to do that regardless of not being able to speak Japanese. So when I created my lesson, I spent hours on it, because remember, I have to make it simple. I have to make it clear, because this is not your first language, right? So I taught through simple language and a lot of games, and I did use PowerPoint to present the concepts, right? So that was done visually and through videos, right? So that they are hearing other English speakers, right? So not only myself, right? And then we had a lot of interaction. In my classes, all my students, unfortunately for them, they have to speak to me at least once each class. No matter how long, because I need to know are you understanding this, and why aren't you understanding that? So here in America, I would say is that we use more computer-based activities, right? So in science, we use scientific simulations like gizmos, where you can actually do the science experiment that you could do hands-on the computer. But that is really, for me, I love that, right? And that is really helpful, especially if you're unable to get certain chemicals, or at that level, the students are not able to use those chemicals because they are more dangerous at this time. So a scientific simulation is good for that. And then now when they are learning the skills of how to manipulate the scientific equipment, scientific apparatus, right? Then they can do that later on in their educational life. But they still will be able to do a full experiment because they are doing it through a simulation. So I really love that, right? And we do hands-on experiments here, right? But because I'm teaching science here and I taught English in Japan. But we use the computer more here, I would say. But in my classes, unfortunately for my students, they have to write a lot, which does not go over well anytime.
So let's just say that you might not win by your students Teacher of the Year.
But unfortunately, I was nominated for Teacher of the Year last year at Southwest School. Yes. So even though they complained almost endlessly every day, they really did well, because here in North Carolina, we have what is known as a EVA score, which compensates students scores on the end of grade exam, since they have been in like kindergarten, and it tries to project, right, what the scores that they will get on the next exam.
Right.
So for my students, right, the expectation, we just blew it out of the park. So we got the expectation, we got like 113% higher than what was expected from. So that really, that really blew me away, because there was a lot of crying and gnashing of teeth when we had to put in the work every day, and they're saying, "Miss, we'd like to watch a show one of these days." And I said, "Yes, I would love to do that with you. But unfortunately, we have the EOG in May, and thus we have to stay the course.
Yes.
And this did not this did not gain me any friends in the interim, but they appreciated, which was very wholesome to me. They appreciated the effort that I put in each and every day for them, right? So that's why, even though they did not like the daily grind, right? They had to write out why they are answering it in this way. They didn't like that. But when they got the grades that they wanted, some of them, it was the first time they passed an end of grade exam. They were, you should have seen us. We were so ecstatic. We were screaming because I felt so good for you. Imagine the first time you're passing an exam, because some of them really doubted that they could do it. And every day I kept on saying, we can do this. We just need to work. After I said work, there was no takers, and they were successful. I was so happy.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Candice. In any teacher profession, you never appreciate it until the end, right? They don't understand the grind. They understand what you're trying to teach them. And they don't understand that this is where, if you want to be successful, this is what we have to do. And unfortunately, we don't wait to the end. Like I reflect on teachers that I had that challenged me, like you challenge your students. Of course, I did not appreciate it then, but now I appreciate it even more. Now, understanding this is what the teacher had to do in order for me to complete the EOG test or to do well in life, right? I had a geography teacher in 5th grade. She was a regular teacher, but she taught geography all the time. And I am more appreciative when I talk to other people who don't know where the state capital is. They don't know what state, where the state located on the map is. I'm like, man, how y'all didn't know this? Oh, y'all didn't have Mrs. Holland. You said have Mrs. Holland in 5th grade. You know what the country says. You know your city capitals. You know your states. And you know other countries, right? You know, America is not only the United States, it's also include Mexico, North America, Canada, and Mexico. You know, you'll know these things. And so the hard work that you put in, and that's the thing that I get from this, Candice, is that the hard work you put in paid off. Now, I'm pretty sure from your explanation, your excitement there, that you was like, man, I don't know, these kids ever don't get it. So you were just as ecstatic as they were, weren't you, when they got the reports back? Yes, you were, because you put in that hard work. And we all think that, like, the hard work that I put in wasn't worth it. You know, did they really get what I'm trying to get across to them? You know, and I'm sure every teacher put that in their head. Like, I'm trying to do the best I can and give all the materials on all different ways. Did it work? Are they getting it? And that's why I said you was just as ecstatic as they were when you got those results. Oh, my goodness. Candice, before we leave, do you have any advice or suggestions for people, especially students who want to go into teaching? I mean, it's a great profession, and as I told you earlier, it's one of them understated or underserved occupations. Teachers do not get the credit they deserve for what they do for us, and it impacts everyone. Everyone goes to school in order to learn, and they don't realize how important you were. It's what all the teachers are until at the end. It's like, oh yeah, Mrs. Candice Jones. Oh, I remember Miss Jones. Boy, she taught us well, you know. So do you have any suggestions for students who might want to go into teaching?
Yes. Well, I would say that a critical skill that one should learn if you are going to go into teaching is classroom management. You might be good at explaining mathematical concepts, science concepts, something in English. But if you are unable to manage that classroom, you will be miserable and the students will be miserable, right? So before you can even say anything about any content, you have to learn the skill of being able to manage students, even if they are adults, even if they are children. You have to be able to learn that skill, and then now you can start teaching about the content. So you have to learn how to put the expectations of your class in place first in order to be an effective educator. So I would suggest that before you take up any teaching role, that you go in a classroom. If it is to volunteer, do substitute teaching, something, right? In the summer, do a summer school class so that you can go in.
Right.
Instead of going into this the first day of teaching and thinking, This was not what I expected.
Well, Candice, and I think that's great advice. I have not heard that advice before, suggested before. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here, and I think it's very important. And I think my brother, who's also a teacher, where he's retired now, he said the same thing. That classroom management is the most important thing you have, because if you don't have classroom management, you won't be able to teach anyone without that management. Candice, thank you so much for coming on show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, sir.
And I thank our viewers and listeners for joining me, Mitchell Rivers, on another terrific episode on the Career Education Learning Center podcast, where we're making your career dreams come reality. God bless.